So growing up in the 80s and 90s, skateboarding was everything to me. I mean, I still love skateboarding, but back then, it was all I did. It was all I thought about all the time, 24/7. So Thrashin' was one of my favorite movies, of course. So when Gleaming the Cube came out, I was all over it. So I'm really excited about going to check out these filming locations. So if you love Gleaming the Cube as much as I do, or even if you just kind of like it, come check out the locations with me. John Wayne Airport, Santa Ana, California is where the beginning of the movie takes place. Now, all the buildings have been remodeled significantly since the film, but in the very first shot, the opening scene of the movie, we see that John Wayne statue, and that does still exist. It's just been relocated inside that building straight ahead. This right here is the opening shot of the movie. As the camera comes around to the front, it zooms out and we see Brian and his friends skating all around the statue. Now the statue used to be located in front of the Eddie Martin terminal, but when they remodeled the airport, they built a new terminal called the Thomas F. Riley, and that's where the statue is located now today. It's inside the lobby of the Thomas F. Riley terminal. Now over on this side of the airport is where they keep the small planes and jets, and that's where Brian and his friends can be seen skating around the planes. Now if you look off in the distance there, you can see a tower. One just like that can be seen while Brian's talking to the pilot, trying to convince him to take them up in the airplane. Okay, when Vin is going to his job at Bolsa Video, you see him riding that awesome Honda Elite scooter. He would have come right here into the Today Plaza. Now this section over here has been remodeled. Looks a lot different. There would have been a driveway somewhere right about here that we see him turn into. Now there is still a pathway over here. If we walk over here, we can see there is a path that leads back there to the other side. I don't know if that is where he was turning to go through. So that pathway would have led right out here, and he would have turned right here. And according to the movie, this is where the actual Bolsa Video building would have been. So I have a feeling that it was some movie trickery and that Bolsa Video is actually in a completely different plaza. Because later in the movie, we see Brian skating into the Today Plaza when he's trying to find out what's written on the paper, leading us to believe that the pool hall is located in here, but in fact it is not. Okay, Brian's high school is Woodbridge High in Irvine, California, and this place looks almost completely as it did in the 1980s. The only difference I see is in the movie we see the name of the school right here on this building. Since then they've got an updated sign, and the trees of course have gotten a lot bigger. So right here we would have seen Brian being escorted out of the school by a staff member. And then Brian's dad would have been parked right here. The parking lot has changed quite a bit. They've added all these awnings and they're doing some construction over here. Everybody's hanging out in here when they see Brian walking in for the first time in his preppy clothes. He comes walking right in through there. This is where my favorite line in the entire movie takes place.
Yeah, rip it up.
Yeah, rip it up.
And right here is actually where Brian's friends would have been hanging out. You can make out the shot by the lines on the wall, the roof line, and this tree right here. And as best as I can tell, the wall used to end right there at that line, and right where the windows are, that's where the payphones would have been.
Quick, down 911.
This is the spot where we see Vin and Tina coming from over by the elevators, and Brian is riding his skateboard from down that way. he cuts off Vin and they have a little conversation right here in front of the elevators. You can see those awnings in the background, along with all of these lights and both of those buildings on the right and left.
Nice threats, Kelly. Yeah.
This is the door that Brian would have went through, riding his skateboard straight to the back. It's kind of hard to see with the reflection of the glass, but he would have went straight back to that counter and talked to the man about translating what was on the paper. And he would have went over to some pool tables somewhere over in this area. Can't say 100%, but I'm going to assume that this is where Brian is asking people to translate what's on the paper right before he goes into the pool hall. Bobby Nguyen comes and stands out front to watch Brian skate off. They remodeled and got a smaller sign, but as you can see, it's the same pool hall, same name after all these years. Brian's on his way from the pool hall to the motel. He makes a little detour almost 40 miles away to Venice, California. We see him skate right past this Tito's Taco sign. He skates up to this intersection and pushes that button to cross the street. That's when he sees Bobby Nguyen sitting right here in his car staring at him. Brian crosses the street this way. This building here can be seen behind him as he's crossing the street. He crosses this way and then across that street over to the gas station. Then in an effort to catch Brian, Bobby floors it through that intersection. Comes right here, we see this travel lodge behind him as he turns into the gas station, cuts through, comes back out this driveway, heading down Sepulveda Boulevard right here. Alright, this next location was extremely confusing and difficult to figure out. It took a lot of investigating. Now, if you look online, there's two locations that come up for the motel. One of them is on Catella, right across the street from Disney's California Adventure. It still exists, it's just been remodeled. The other location was on Harbor Boulevard, right next to Disneyland. I'm going to show you both locations and tell you how I figured out which one is the correct location. So the Stovall family owned a whole line of motels around Disneyland, and they all had a space theme, including the Atomic Age motel that you see in Gleaming the Cube. Some of the motels have been torn down, some have been remodeled. Right here across from Disney's California Adventure is this Best Western Plus, and if you see at the bottom, Best Western Plus Stovall's Inn. So this was definitely one of the Stovall properties. Now, if we take a look at this motel, there's a couple of scenes in Gleaming the Cube where there's cars coming in and out of the driveway. You can see those three squares right there. That little ledge, the Coke machine, those stairs, the lobby, everything matches up, including just the way the front of the motel looks with the palm trees and the windows. But unfortunately, in reality, the actual location of the Atomic Age Lodge is right here. It's now Disney's California Adventure. And if you look right here, the intersection of Disney Way and Harbor Boulevard, this is where we see the shot of the police coming into the motel. They would have turned into the motel driveway right there. And you can see they pass through that intersection. You see the street signs, and right there on the corner is where that original Disneyland sign would have been, because that was the entrance to Disneyland right there. One of the ways that I was able to figure out that this is the correct location is that in the scene when Brian's leaving the motel, you can see a whole bunch of other businesses in the background that would have been right here. First, you see an International House of Pancakes, And then just beyond that, you see a sign for Muggsy Malone's, which was a bar that hosted a lot of punk rock shows in the 80s. And if you go online and you Google Muggsy Malone's, a whole bunch of flyers come up for it. And the address brings us right here to this location. This is where Muggsy Malone's would have been. And then past Muggsy Malone's, the last sign that you can make out in the shot is for the Candy Cane Motel. You can see a motel sign with 2 crossed candy canes on top. And if we move right over here, there it is. It's now called the Candy Cane Inn, and it's been remodeled. But somehow it survived all these years. The only business to survive. All the other ones had to be torn down to make way for California Adventure. But somehow the Candy Cane Motel still remains. One of the reasons this location didn't make sense to me was when the maid goes into the room and she opens up the curtains, the Matterhorn and the monorail can be seen right outside the window. Now, none of these rooms face Disneyland. That's California Adventure, and then Disneyland is the other side of that. So before California Adventure was built, you would have been able to see Disneyland, but the Matterhorn would have been way off in the distance, and again, none of the rooms faced that way. But it makes perfect sense from this location. The windows to the motel room would have been facing Disneyland right there, and the monorail would have been right outside the windows. So for whatever reason, this motel is almost an exact replica of the one we see in the movie. But unfortunately, it's just not the one. So if you ever go to Disney's California Adventure and you ride the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, which is that building right there in front of us, it used to be the Tower of Terror. So if you ever ride that ride, know that you're sitting in the spot of the Atomic Age Lodge from Gleaming the Cube. And then Bobby comes here to this car wash to call Colonel Truck. He pulls right into that driveway right there and parks his car. This right here would have been an Arco station. He pulls right into this driveway, parks right about here, and this car wash sign here, the phone booth would have been right beside this pole. That building over there can be seen in the background. At the time it was a Shakey's Pizza, but it's the same sign and same building. And this is Bobby Nguyen's apartment, where Brian runs into Lechero. The shot that we get in the movie is actually shot from up there in that corner, looking down over the courtyard. Camera's facing this direction. See a little bit of that corner and the freeway overpass. We see Brian going up those steps, and he goes to the very last door on the right. That's Bobby Nguyen's apartment right there. Brian and Tina's date at the Orange Plaza would have took place somewhere here. It was completely remodeled and turned into the block, and now it's the outlets at Orange. Balboa Island. Brian takes the ferry across the water, and we see him ride his bike right here past the Ferris wheel. Brian's friends are coming this way on their skateboards. That fun zone right there was the arcade. He's riding right along here when his friends spot him.
Got a bicycle. Next thing you know, he'll be riding a scooter. Flying.
Right here that Brian's friends stop him and they have a little heart-to-heart with him. You can tell by the Ferris wheel and the lamp. Peninsula Park in Newport Beach. The stage is set up somewhere over here by the sand. And off there in the distance you see the pier. This is the Pizza Hut that Tony Hawk works at. Obviously the building's been remodeled, but you can see right here is where Tony Hawk's truck would have been parked when he comes out with his skateboard to deliver the pizzas. The front of his truck would have been right where this lamppost is. I remember watching this as a kid and thinking, man, when I grow up, I'm definitely getting a job where I get to ride my skateboard at work. Later in the movie, when all the skaters are showing up at the Pizza Hut, we see this building here. It was a Thrifty's, which of course became Rite Aid later on. And over there was a Payless Shoes, which was actually still in business up until just recently. And then later on, when all of Brian's friends start showing up at the Pizza Hut, the truck would have been parked somewhere right over here. The payphones would have been over in this area. Colonel Track and Tina's house in Porter Ranch, California in the San Fernando Valley. Right about where I'm standing is where Brian would have been ducked down behind the car, staking out the house. And then of course he goes skating down that way to go sneak up in the backyard. Brian would have had to climb up this big hill to get into the backyard. And that stone wall that we see in the movie is no longer there. Now they just have an iron fence around the backyard. The house looks almost exactly as it did in the movie. Right there through that side gate, that's where we see Lucero come running out. He stands right there in front of those hedges, pointing his gun down at the stolen police car as it drives off down that street. So they end up coming back this way, heading east. The police car is driving right here on this path. And then Brian heads down this bank and he launches over that water. And when he does, you can see these apartment buildings in the background of the shot for just a second. Now, here's a little story. This is my small connection to the filming of this movie. I actually lived in these apartments at the time that they filmed this movie. Those second set of apartments, so the third and fourth buildings from the left, that's where I lived. And one day my mom picked me up from school and she told me, hey, they were filming something in the wash behind our apartment. And I said, oh really? She said, yeah, it was some kind of a skateboard movie or something. I got really excited and she told me that they had a big ramp down here and there was a whole bunch of skaters and there was a Pizza Hut truck. Now I don't know why the Pizza Hut truck would have been here at this location, but that's what she said. Yeah, I got really mad. I got really mad at her that she didn't come pick me up from school. And I actually, still to this day, it makes me mad. I think she should have picked me up. But yeah, so I lived right here when they filmed that shot. And actually, if you go watch, there's some videos posted on my channel of just me and my friends skateboarding. It's right back here in this alley. We skated in this alley every single day. There wasn't a wall there. That wall is new. It was just a chain link fence. And we hung out back there every day skateboarding. The police car then comes out of this alley. Brian, chasing behind him, magically flies over that little bush that would have been right where that red car is. And then as he chases after the police car down the street, this is the shot we get right here with the bridge and the dead end sign and those townhouses back there. Okay, I bet this is a lot of people's favorite scene. We're at 17th Street and Patton Avenue in San Pedro, California, and this is the hill where the Pizza Hut truck comes over. And the way you can tell this is the right hill is right here. The police car flips around and makes a U-turn. And when it does, the camera comes around this way and we get a perfect shot of this house, and that house. And this is the corner where Brian stops to cheer on his friends. He stops right here, takes a look this way to see his friends coming down the hill, and as the police car rounds the corner here, it passes right by this house.
I said run along! Go!
This is the intersection that they go through when they're supposedly getting onto the 405 freeway. This is Ocean Boulevard and Golden Avenue in Long Beach, California. You can see that yellow island right there in the middle and this lamppost on the corner for a brief second. And as Christian Slater's going through the intersection on his skateboard, you can see this building in the background behind him. The shot that we get of Brian in the police car coming through the intersection, getting onto the freeway. So this is what they use for the on-ramp to the 405. Right here is where he tells him,
up on the curb, the diamond lane. Go on, get up there.
it's a line that really doesn't make any sense at all. Right there is where the guy in the Corvette would have been. All that grassy area can be seen behind him. Again, this is not a freeway on-ramp, it's just a little road, but they had all the cars stopped right here, making it look like they're waiting to get onto the freeway, like there's a meter up ahead. This is where they shoot the chase on the supposed freeway, but it is not a freeway at all. It is shot in Long Beach along Shoreline Drive. All right, this is it. This is the spot of the finale of the movie where Lawndale has the little standoff with Lucero, and we're on the road that takes you to the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. The police car would have been right here, and you can see that parking structure and those buildings in the background. They would have crossed a little bridge that used to be here, going over to the other side. And right there is where Lawndale is holding Tina hostage, and he fires a shot at Lucero, and you can actually see that section of the parking structure behind him. Lucero would have been somewhere over here, ducked down behind this wall, and that building right there can actually be seen behind Lucero. We cut back to Lawndale, and he's standing up on the wall right here when Brian comes flying through the sky and whacks him in the face with his skateboard. And just on the other side of the bridge, this is where Brian hits the ground and goes rolling. We see those buildings right there in the background. And then the camera does a quick shot from this direction. We see just a little bit of that parking garage. This is where traffic comes screeching to a halt, trying not to hit Brian. And the weird thing is, if this was a freeway, traffic would actually be heading away from us, but in the movie, it's coming towards us.
Are you okay?
Tina, Lucero, and Yabo all come over to check on Brian right here. And those buildings right there can be seen off in the background, along with those signs right there. Right here is where he laid on the ground, and they all gathered around him checking to see if he was all right. Okay, so that's going to do it. I had a blast checking out these locations. There were a few spots that I wanted to include, but I just wasn't able to find them. So if you're watching this and you know some Gleaming the Cube filming locations that weren't in my video, send me a message because I'd love to make part 2. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Ring the notification bell so you know when I post new videos. I got lots more 80s filming locations on the way. Follow me on Instagram at 80s Life Forever, and I'll see you guys next time.